Oh. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, May 5th final budget meeting for the town of Cumberland. We're going to use this just to talk through any final loose ends, talk about some goals maybe for next year. And then I'd love to kick it off. I think Helene had given a kind of overview for everybody on the financials of where we're at, but I'd love to start with the trash item that Chris had sent through, if you don't mind. Unless you have anything else, Helene, to start with. No? Okay.
No.
All right. Let's talk about trash cameras.
It's not a lot of information, but I did talk to Diane Barnes over in North Yarmouth because they put one on their trash truck over there. So, and I've met with our trash hauler. So they gave us a price of $35,000 to put the camera on the truck. They can spread that out over the duration of our contract, which is 4 years remaining, and that comes to around $8,700 a year.
Okay.
What happens is that every day the camera takes pictures of every stop. And as the trash is getting dumped into the hopper, it snaps a picture of what's in the hopper. They have computer software that will identify our green bags. If they pick up anything that it doesn't remotely look like our green bags or it's some other foreign product, they will send us an email. So at the end of the day, we'll get an email with all the pictures they think are a violation along with the address of where the violation happened. The town will now have to provide staff to review this, and then we would need to come up with an ordinance or policies of how we take it from there. North Yarmouth sends them, the person, a card. I think they try to call the person first. Happens again, they send a card. Happens 3 times, they send Public Works over to take the can. And then the person has to come in and appeal. So that's one thing that they do. They've had pretty good success with it. They've seemed to have a pretty good compliance now. She said they're only seeing probably 2 or 3 a day that are non-compliant, and sometimes it's just the camera picked up something, an error, and the person was in compliance. So that's really it in a nutshell. There's really not a lot of other towns doing this. Falmouth isn't doing it yet. I know Falmouth sent out a Public Works employee just to do visual inspections of the trash cans, which I don't think we really have the staff to do that, and it seems really time-consuming and cumbersome to do that. So I think my recommendation is if we're going to go forward with this, to give the camera a try just based on North Yarmouth's success.
Go ahead, Dick.
How does it work with the recycling part? Because those don't go in a bag, right?
Right, but they've got an ID on the cans, so they know which one's recycling and which one's trash.
Yep.
So they're going to pick up on the bags, but they can also see inside the recycling containers, and they can flag. They're not going to go through and say this cardboard isn't recyclable, but they'll see if there's an old VCR in there or anything like that.
So everything, this is probably just a really obvious thing that I'm just slow to be picking up, but like currently, if you have some extra cardboard, sometimes people will put it next to their can, right? So that's no longer going to be a go because the arm is not going to be able to extend and put it in. So everything has to fit into that recycling bin, including cardboard cans and any other recyclable materials.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, cool. And then I have one other question.
Yeah.
Okay. If folks want to buy an additional bin, are they allowed to do that? And do they do that through us or through, is it Casella or is it Waste Management? I can't remember.
It would go through Casella.
It would go through Casella, so like the family would reach out to them and then.
Right, they would have to do that on their own. We're going to provide every house 2 bins.
Okay.
If they want a 3rd bin, they would have to reach out to the trash company and request the bin and pay for the bin.
And what's the size of the bins again? Sorry.
Oh, you've got me stumped now. We've gone back and forth so many times. They 30?
35?
Yeah, something.
35 gallon?
There's 2 right here in the lobby at Town Hall for folks to look at. We've also going to be ordering some smaller ones, but those are really going to be for, our places that have our seniors that have small garages
Got it.
and live in the senior housing and the
Push the
condos.
drain.
The problem with the small bins, a lot of the towns found that they weren't big enough, number one, and that the arm sometimes doesn't hold the bin, so the bin goes into the hopper, and then we're buying more bins.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
I think
Go ahead.
once we roll this out as well, it's I think probably something we can bring into you and kind of roll it out with a policy of, this is what we're going to be doing, and our recommendations for enforcement or non-enforcement or whatever you would choose us to do.
Okay. Andy?
Chris, so if we did this at 87-ish hundred a year for what, 4 years, said, then the contract, assuming that we renewed again with Casella, are we then paying again for this to put the thing on the truck, or is it just sort of a once we've paid, and then assuming that as long as we're sticking with Casella, we've paid for this and it's no longer an expense, and we'd just be paying for the software to search it, or like what? I guess the sort of the answer is long term. What are the costs beyond once the camera is paid for, like the physical camera?
The only thing I can figure is if we could pay $35,000 up front and we get the software and the camera for the life of our contract, and then it's almost probably a rental. The lifetime on these cameras, and especially on the back of the truck, will probably be, once we get into a new contract, we may be looking at a new camera. But really, for now, this is really just something that we're adding on to our contract as a service from Casella. But towards the end, if we continue on and the camera's in good shape, then there probably would be some software charges moving forward because we already own the camera. And again, this has been a lot of what ifs because we've met with the company twice. They're not even thrilled about doing it. They didn't want to do it. They don't want a third party putting anything on their trucks. So it's being supplied by them through a third party, but everything we do is through Casella. And there hasn't been a lot of towns in the area doing this. And I think one of the reasons we're looking at it is the revenue stream from this really, it pays for our solid waste, or a good portion of our solid waste pickup.
And I know conversations with Falmouth, with Nathan Poor, the Falmouth manager, I think they're looking at going in that direction as well, because having that spot, I guess you call it spot selection review of it hasn't been successful. And they've seen a significant drop off in their revenue related to that. So the compliance hasn't been as great. So they definitely have a lot of leakage from that side of it. So if you think about the opportunity of, if you're, let's say you're going to raise $200,000, if it's going to cost you $8,000 a year to raise $250,000 versus saying not spending $8,000 a year or sending out staff to do it, and you pull in 150, that eight's a really good investment in a higher level of productivity. So you're investing in your revenue really in a way to do that, and we won't. Part of our thought is we would look at this as an end-of-year transfer instead of putting it onto the budget this year and then working into next year's budget, so there's no impact in the FY26 budget for this year.
Go ahead, Tig.
Does the camera have a warranty on it, or at least, just it's Maine in the wintertime and weather events happen. Like, or do we just if it conks out on year one, right? Are we in the hole for another $35,000, or do they have any kind of guarantee about performance? Or
I think the camera's the cheap part of it.
okay,
It's the
it's a software.
software. Yeah.
Ronald?
I have these same cameras on my wreckers.
Like a dash cam.
When it rains, they don't work. When it snows, they're covered with snow. And when they get trash on top of them, you can't see. If I bought a new wrecker tomorrow, I wouldn't have the camera put on it because it's a $6,000 option just for the camera. And mine's a little more sophisticated than theirs because mine has two different lenses, but theirs is up on top of the truck. I tow these trucks, so I know a little bit about them. And the camera is only, it does take a picture every time, but it's only as good as the guy driving the truck as well, to be honest with you. But I would recommend trying it without it, just see how things go. If we feel that, you know, if we can get Bob Vale to pick everybody's trash every morning on the way to work, I mean, but no, seriously, I mean, I would try it without it, and if you feel like it's being abused, then maybe go with it, but these side load trucks are forever broke down, and there's too many mechanics on them, to be honest with you. I mean, they work good when they work, but when they don't work, they have to drive all the way to Casellas to get another truck to send it back out here to finish the route. Or they'll go get the guy and he'll be riding on the back of the truck throwing the can in again. I mean, it hasn't been fully developed yet. I mean, it works, but it's just, if you see one, it's a big scissor apparatus that goes out, picks the can up, and then it comes back in, and then it dumps it. There's just a ton of moving parts. And it's kind of a catch-22, to be honest with you, the camera thing. I mean, and I feel that if it gets abused, then you probably have to go that route, so.
You know, to Councilor Kopp's thought, we could look at it for 6 months and see, you know, from July 1 to January 1, what the revenue stream looks like, and evaluate that and say, how are we looking at, you know, we were conservative on estimates this year, as you recall, with bag revenue, compared to where we're going to be for this year, knowing that we were going into a new system. So you could look at that and say, well, if we look at that halfway through the year and we find, yeah, we've taken a real hit on bag revenue and compliance, we can say, okay, well, let's try this. So we've got the ability to experiment. I know North Yarmouth's been happy with it, and I know Falmouth hasn't been happy with what happened on their other side of it. So we'll kind of try, you know, we may find good compliance here and wait and see what people do after 6 months. We'll know pretty quick, and then make that
Bailey.
decision.
Matt or Chris, what does a non-camera monitoring system look like for you guys? No cameras, it's boots on the ground, checking random cans, I assume, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right, and just tracking the revenues, as the manager said, we'd be watching the revenues on a monthly basis and sales and bag sales, and we'll probably get a feel for it that way. But short of putting someone walking around and checking them, then we would just really go by the bag sales.
And to Mike's point, a friend of mine who's a Greeley graduate is a foreman over to Casellas. He says the best thing that they see happening is neighbors will turn neighbors in. They'll say, hey, so-and-so's throwing paper bags in the trash. No, I'm serious. I've talked to him about this, and he says, you know, they're buying their trash bags, and they see the neighbor going out there with something, and he's hiding it, and they'll turn them in. I mean, and he says that happens a lot.
Ow.
So,
Honey, I'm going up to your place to watch
self-policing.
you.
I have a
I'm telling you
dumpster.
right now.
I will say, I'm not opposed to the 6-month lag, but what concerns me is that it's going to have to be something we're always monitoring, right? Like, I feel like there is some peace of mind in knowing that we have a mechanism in place and we're not just like waiting and hoping. I'm not opposed to doing a 6-month like trial to see how things go, but I feel like after that, I don't know, it just makes me nervous that since it is something we're counting on, you know. Go ahead, Helene.
I was going to also say that you might, 6 months of that $8,000 is going to cost more to employ someone to go checking around than
Yeah.
it is to just have the camera on. That's just my thought. But
Bobs, do you have any sentiments? Huh. Denise?
It could go either way. I really don't have a strong opinion either way on this one.
Okay.
I too have a dumpster, so.
can we hire you to pick up trash?
Maybe
Um,
quarterly, if we look at it after 3 months, we can report back. And I mean, because, you know, we're gonna know pretty quick
Okay.
what that, I think what that volume is, and say, okay, at 3 months, we'll know, you know, like, we should be tracking at X amount of dollars for this, and then at 6 months, we should be tracking at Y, and if we're not at goal, then we can say, all right, let's get that in there. But at 3 months, we'll say, well, we're 10-15% off, then we can start, you know, we can kind of get those wheels in motion to say, okay, how long is it going to take to deploy that? And then at 6 months, we'll know, and then hit the ground running.
Yeah, I think the 3 months would feel better for me in the sense that I don't also want to deploy another, like, I don't want to put in place that we're going to have like town staff checking. Like, I don't, if we're either doing it or we're not doing it. Like, I don't feel like we should be using people's time to go trash cans. Like, we either care or we don't care, you know? Go
I
ahead.
think people might get a little bit more sensitive if someone
Yeah.
with a town of Cumberland shirt on is.
Yeah. I would.
looking in. I know.
I would be upset.
It's, people are funny about, I know they're throwing it away, but people are still funny about it.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Tig.
How much more life is on the contract with Casellas?
4 years.
It is 4 years, okay. Yeah, I think the quarterly thing makes sense. I mean, track it and see how it goes and.
There is some conversation. I know Manager Poor and I and others in our region have talked about trying to get all of our contracts in alignment. And that way, there's strength in numbers. So at the next renewal, that we just say, okay, we can do this. And, if Cumberland, North Yarmouth, Falmouth, Gorham, Westbrook, Wyndham all come together at one time and say, well, we've got, 100,000 people here. What's that contract look like? And so that's a pretty active conversation between all those peer communities as well, to try to get that all in alignment and have strength in purchasing at that point.
Go ahead, Tig.
If we track it quarterly, I'm assuming that you have the data for the same time period from last year as well, so it's apples to apples.
Yeah, we'd probably look at a 3-year rolling average. I think that'd probably be your best way to, and then come back and say, okay, you'll know pretty quick.
Yep.
I do think so.
Sweet.
Whichever way we go with this, I do think we need to ramp up the communication on the fact that the bags aren't going away. There's still, I think, some view out there of, oh yeah, they're going away because we're switching over and we don't need to use them anymore. So if we're continuing with the bags, I think we really need to hit that hard out into the community that they are staying. You still need to use them, etc. Because that will impact things too. Because people, I think, some have had in their head that they are going away as of July 1.
That's what was told to everyone, so
Yeah, a year and a half ago or whenever it was, a year ago. So
that they were over.
What is the,
There is plans for outreach
Yeah.
as well. I know staff, we've had a pretty extensive conversation about it to try to get that word out. We're kind of looking through the budget process to see what council's feelings were on that as far as going forward with that as the bag approach. So once we know, now that we know that, we'll
Yeah.
start our outreach and publicizing it.
to be clear, I don't think that it was ever confirmed that the bags were going away. I think there was initial conversation, right, Matt?
Prior to my start, I know there was quite a bit of conversation about it.
Yeah.
And at the point of the last contract, I think that was a big point of it. But looking at the challenge of enforcement and monitoring and making sure that there is compliance with it was looked at, okay, it might not be cost effective to do that. So, and I know, and North Yarmouth was a beta testing site for that technology. So there was really a lot of unknowns, I guess, before that. So it's like, well, you might as well just write off the revenue. And
Yeah.
if it found that was going to be successful and people were going to be on board with the program, then it was, you could look at that and say it was going to be viable. So it's probably better to, just say, it's probably better to keep on the pay-as-you-throw versus ending it and then coming back with it, because that's a really tough
Yeah.
pill to swallow.
Is the general consensus people are okay with the keeping the bags? Yeah, for revenue. Ron?
I just do have one question, and I've seen this in different towns. People will actually tie the trash bag to the can, and then they'll have their trash in the can. How is that working? I mean, and I've seen that several times, different places. They'll actually tie, who has the blue bags? Because those are the ones that I've seen.
Yarmouth.
Is it Yarmouth? They're tied to the trash can, and the trash is inside it, which
You
I'm
just
thinking-
set it on the
Very well.
top and tuck it in like a blanket.
Well, the guy must not untie the bag and take it with him. That's what I'm getting at. I mean, I think people need to be aware of how this is going to work. I mean, like Andrew says, there's a lot to learn here that people got to realize how this works, so.
What's the deployment date for the trash cans? Do we know yet? I know we've all loosely talked about it, but do we have a sense of when the new trash cans will come out?
Yeah, they keep pushing us off. Right now, they're telling us July 1st. We're waiting for the truck. So every time they get a new contract, they get a brand-new truck. So they're waiting for the truck. So we're going to start rolling this out probably within the next week or two with Whitney and talk about the cans and for a potential July 1st start.
Okay. And when you say July 1st, that means potentially trash cans will be delivered to our trash. Is the thought that trash cans will be delivered to residents? Do you have to pick them up? Like, do we know any of those kind of like nitty gritty details?
Trash cans will be delivered.
Okay.
So and we'll try to let folks know when they're going to be delivered, what areas of town.
Okay.
There's going to be some confusion with ADUs because we don't really track the ADUs and we don't really know who's got an apartment and who needs extra cans. So we'll be rolling that out to talk to folks and the trash company, Casella, they're going to have a whole crew and helping us with notification, and so we're hoping it goes smoothly. Actually, a couple of the other towns, it did go pretty smoothly. Everyone was really worried and scared, but there's always going to be bumps in it.
Yeah.
But I think we're pretty confident. We've been meeting with them and talking about this for the past 2 years, so we're pretty confident that,
How many cans you gonna hand out, Chris?
yeah, we've got 7,000 residents,
Yeah, roughly.
times 2.
Damn.
Okay. So I'm gathering everyone seems okay with with trash bags remaining in as a revenue line item, and that we should push off the camera decision for 4 months into the fiscal year, is what I'm kind of sensing, for 3 months. Yeah.
I am not a bag fan, but I see where we're going here, so I'm fine. I do want us to consider, though, if we are keeping them, like I mentioned before, seeing if we could tie that into food pantry or bags.
Yeah.
But however we want to do that, if we do.
Go ahead, Tig.
I would just say, because I think the contract came in as less, right, than some of the trash contract was less than some of the prior ones had been. And with just the point about keeping the bags, one of the things that I was hoping would help kind of balance it out within the community. I know we had a successful pilot back in the fall, but maybe looking to next year to see what we can do again with a bulky item drop-off week. I think that wasn't going to work for this spring because of, I know, Chris, you've got some big staffing shortages on the public works side, but if we could look to, doing maybe at least one bulky item drop-off event per year. I mean, I would love to do 2, but
We're looking at 2 for next year.
awesome.
Yep.
And then maybe like at some point, and I could even do this, but there are some good vendors out there. Like 1-800-GOT-JUNK is great. They come right to you. They don't do it by weight the way that Riverside does. Like, I know that we have like a vendor, like a vendor list, right, for the town, like sometimes that we, but it might be worth just looking into suggestions for community members if they're like, what do I do with all of this? I don't want to go to Riverside, or maybe I don't have a truck. What are some alternatives that they could look to as a resource if they can't get their couch to the end of their driveway anymore and they don't have a truck, I'd be happy to look into that if there are any parameters. They're not part of the mafia, I'm assuming, is one of them.
We can do that.
All right. Awesome. All right, so that's the end of trash. I think the other piece of this is, I know going into tonight's council meeting, we're hoping to vote on this. So wanted to see if there was any other kind of general conversation surrounding the budget or cuts that we want to make in anticipation of the vote this evening, or if anyone had any thoughts or feedback on the budget in general before we look forward for next year. Oh, Bob, go ahead.
Just a point of reference, is there any federal dollars that we directly receive?
No, no, sir.
Or indirectly.
I don't believe so. Not in this year's budget. And the big one obviously would be the rotary work, but that's not, that's up in the air at this point. Just waiting to see where that's going to settle out. But we don't have, there's nothing directly or indirectly in this year's budget. So we anticipate everything we have is. Pardon? Yeah, it's either local or state revenues.
Even the library, sorry.
Yeah, even the library.
Okay.
Yep.
So like, just humor me because I don't understand. But when it says like, oh, we've lost federal funding, Maine State Libraries. So what does that mean for like Prince Memorial?
There may be impact on the Minerva or the interlibrary loan system that might slow that down as they figure out how they're going to manage that. But
Okay.
the service is still going to be there. But they had to shut down for a couple of weeks as they were retooling and figuring where they're up. There's a lot of grant funding that goes to the state library that locally a lot of towns don't have, and that's just been. So it doesn't really have any downstream impact on us, but it may be that there may be some delays in that.
Okay.
But as far as financially, there's not an impact there.
Okay. Mike, go ahead.
Man, I think I know the answer on this, where you stand, but in Cape, you ran a transfer station.
Yep.
Your thoughts on it? Pain in the ass. I know you guys had a big incident and,
Yep.
but in a whole, what are your thoughts, Matt?
I think you got a great system here. It's, I think where Cumberland is where a lot of these towns that are running their own municipal solid waste and recycling centers are going to go to. Just because it's, it's no mystery I live in Gray. Gray has what Cape used to have. Basically, it's a big hopper, and we throw stuff down there, and it's dangerous. And Gray does all their own recycling, and they used to be good for the recycling markets. Went in the direction that they went into, and now it's kind of you hope like heck you break even. And they designed that whole facility really for processing or throughput of recycling stuff. It's tough to staff. I will say it's tough to staff. Even with 3 full-timers in Cape, it's tough to staff. So that's, there's that. Gray's got a lot of people working out there. They got a lot of hands moving a lot of different directions on a Saturday and a Sunday that I've seen. I think the way that it's done here, it works. It's where people are going to go. That's just how it's at. You've got to find a place to have it. We all have capped landfills that we've had to work with and work around for years, and so there's management there. But staffing issues are the big one. And EcoMaine does a great job. We're an owner community here in Cumberland, and I think that's probably the most. Yeah, it's probably the preferred way to go at this point in time, because you've exported a lot of some of the management issues and the manpower issues that you have to deal with, but it's the convenience factor is there as well. A lot of people, I think, to have the ability to take it to the end of your driveway to have it picked up, versus having to drive it over to town. And as you get older, it's easier for folks who are older to do that curbside, and people like to. I guess in 30 years of doing this, I've had people say, either when I was elected or a manager, I don't get anything from my town. I got to take my trash to the dump. It's like, well, we did pave the roads, we did plow the roads, we did, put the bad guys away. But, well, you don't even pick up my trash. So I think there's a lot of satisfaction on that side of it. And then if you can add items like the bulky item drop-off, things along those lines, then you try to meet that need in the middle. So I think there's a lot more strengths on the curbside than there is on the, I guess you could say the romantic version of going to the dump. Just, if I could have curbside at my house, I'd love it. We had renters at my neighbor's house one year, and they kept putting their trash under the porch. They were like, well, the owner told us that they had curbside in Gray. And I said, well, you might want to rent a truck, because they had to haul their trash out after a whole winter full of, they were city people, you know, so I look at that, just kind of, I think you get a good system here.
Thanks,
I
Matt.
think we do, yeah. Thank you, welcome.
Denise, go ahead.
Bag sourcing question. Do all towns get their bags from one manufacturer? Can we look at recycled content bags?
What is the recycled content bag?
A bag that it contains recycled content. I don't know.
So like the bag is made out of recycled?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, you know, you can go to the store, like, and not most, but there are bags where you can get up to like 40% what would have been going into ocean plastic. You know what I mean? I'm sure that, you know, the price would be jacked up, but I just don't even know if it exists, if it's available for municipal bags.
I defer to Chris on that.
Not that I know of. We use Waste Zero. That's a contractor that all the towns in the area use around here.
Okay. I figured.
But again, we can look into that
Yeah,
to
we
see
can
if there are.
Okie dokie.
I know, I mean, there's compostable bags, I mean,
They're tough.
just from
Yeah.
personal experience, my wife wants to buy the compostable bags. I like Glad bags.
Yeah,
Because they
I
can hold more, they don't break, and the other ones I gotta tie at the top, so.
was using compostable bags for a bit because I thought it would be a better idea. And then after researching, I realized it was actually worse because if you're not composting them and you're putting them in the landfill, it actually creates more emissions.
Yep.
So it's like counterintuitive. So compost your compostable bags.
Yep.
Don't throw them in a landfill.
And the way EcoMaine incinerates the trash, I mean, the way they scrub that is pretty amazing. I mean, I don't know, I try to explain it at home, it's like, it's just going up in smoke, and they're cleaning, you know, the air quality coming out of there is, it's heavily regulated, and, but yeah, it's you know, you wait and see where we're gonna go to with that.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about this year's budget? No? All right. Ron?
I had one question, and I was just going through the bigger budgets the other night, and this one popped up. Under the police budget, travel expenses are up 3,000%, and I know there's got to be a reason. It went from $162 to $7,500.
Some of it was moving it from having the individual departments put that in their budgets, whereas before it used to be held in one underneath the manager's budget.
Okay.
And this one year, with the chief and the deputy chief, both had conferences in this year's budget. So,
Okay.
so it kind of moved away from
I
one
knew
area
there was a good
before.
reason, but I just saw the 3,000% increase and figured there was something
they-
going on, so.
They're both part of the national, they, both the chief and the deputy chief are members of national organizations. So we just felt it was better because normally it's in the admin budget and then it has to be on a rotation. So this was to prevent having to worry about whether there's going to be enough funding for them.
Perfect.
So I follow on to that, Bill, I think we saw in the police department, these, not the police department, the fire department, but all these organizations that they belong to. And, you know, it seems to me that it's just a little unnecessary that we should be doing this on a regional basis. We don't have to have our chief and assistant chief have a membership in all these organizations. It seems to me that there's be better ways to do that, and there is some cost associated with that, so.
Yeah, on the fire side, I know they, most of that's is all state, state of Maine, not super regional. I think Danny's got one, Chief Small has one national affiliation, I think, from the,
It went from 2,000 to 4,000, you know, I mean, it's membership dues. it's-
we may find savings on that in this year's budget. If there's a change, we'll definitely report back out to that. I think it was both chief and deputy chief on that, so we may have an update on that as we go through the fiscal year.
Go ahead, Denise.
Follow-up question. I know, like, for tech, for example, you can typically count on your employer paying for a certification, and I know we do that, but is that the organization joining, is that sort of part of that? Kind of like a job perk where you expect that your employer is paying for training and your membership in these organizations as part of your position?
Often for the chief levels, yeah. I mean, that's generally part of what the overall, like, employment offer, oftentimes will have that in there.
Go ahead, Bob.
But you do want to be responsible with it, and you can't join every organization.
Right.
It has to be tailored to where you need to be.
I think I could say that I'm pleased at where we arrived at, you know, and the work that we all did. And that's not to say that we can't all dig in here and find $100 here and $100 there and $200 there. But I don't want to be, you know, come across as you know, not, you know, this is somebody else's job. My job is to look at the you know, the macro, and you know, I don't want to drill down into the pennies and the nickels and the dimes, but certainly I think that we've shown that we've done a good job of getting where we were this year, and you know, I'm respectful of the jobs that you do, and
Well, thank you.
feel free to tell me to back off anytime.
Councilor Vail, you do not have to back off. This is a great, you know, I know from the staff side, we enjoyed just answering the questions that were brought forward, and quite honestly, that's what you want. You want councilors to ask you questions about where we're at through the budget, because, you know, it comes to me, then it comes to you, and it becomes the council's budget. So that's the way I look at it, and staff does too. So we're grateful for the insights and the conversation, for sure. We try to get to where you want us to be.
Can I ask, since you're rounding almost a year, has there been any spots where you think we have gaps for revenue opportunity that we should be exploring moving into this year?
Overall, I
You
think,
on the spot.
yeah, overall, I think the town does really well on its revenue opportunities. I mean, you could look at, I mean, there's always pay and display parking you could consider in certain areas for out-of-towners, at possibly Twin Brook or Broad Cove. There's a couple areas there that you could look at. But I don't know if it would be a game changer,
Yeah.
as much as it may be an enforcement challenge.
Yeah.
So there's that side of it. You could look at, you know, I think it's always important to look at your different permit fees and make sure that they track and comparable to other communities. But overall, I think the town's looking at just about every area it is. You're very much limited into the different areas. You know, excise and property taxes are your two big ones, and then it's going to come down to, you know, we're looking at rescue revenue. So we're trying to find ways to explore that further. So we've increased rates already in anticipation, or at least as of May 1st, we increased those rates. So we're trying to bring those up to market as well, because a lot of that's passed through. There's some challenges there because Medicare and Medicaid pay that, and then you also oftentimes will, you know, in cases of hardship, you don't want to, you know, send a person a bill. If they get a bill and they say they have a challenge to pay that, then you waive that. fairly regular. I think there's other areas that we will look at to grow on the rescue and public safety side for billing that we can, and so we're exploring those options as well, and those opportunities where, as Councilor Kopp, we were talking about it. If you have to respond onto the turnpike and there's an all hands on deck event, and we should be billing for that, and so it's a question of trying to explore that and set those rates, get it out there and let people know, and that's an area that we should also be looking at, because, you know, we have 2 or 3 items that other towns don't have. You know, 295, 95, and Route 1, and they bring their own form of challenges with them and demands on services that aren't necessarily Cumberland related. They happen to happen in Cumberland, but they're not Cumberland related. So there's a couple areas there that I think we can start looking at as revenue opportunities to get into in the coming year.
Okay. Go ahead, Ron.
And like Matt says, I mean, it's not just the accidents here in town. It's the turnpike, it's Route 1, and it's 295, and probably Route 100. I mean, it's not uncommon for a trailer truck accident to be $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 record call. And the fire department sits there and babysits me for traffic and cleanup I mean, they're using absorbent pads, they're using speedy dry, they're using manpower. And I just think they're missing the boat because, you know, I know for a fact that they've had several of these that they've been to, that they've been there for 4 or 5 hours. They could have billed for the manpower and could have got, you know, $3,000 to $5,000. It's just, and it's not hard money to come by, especially when they have insurance. I mean, and believe me, these insurance companies are expecting bills. I mean,
Okay. Cool. Any other thoughts about FY '27? Well, 26, but just thinking about towards the future, if there's any things we should be putting on the radar for next year. Like Bob, I know you had talked about the insurance committee. Is that something you feel strongly about? Do other people have sentiment surrounding that? But I know, Helene, we just renewed insurance. How long is that for?
Which one?
The health insurance?
The insurance is just for a year.
Just for a year, okay.
The PFML is for the 3 years.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea to have a small standing committee with a counselor involved to have a yearly review, to sit down with staff.
So what does that look like then? So just like,
We put out an RFP to like we do for serving on any committee. People with any interest, the nominating committee would bring a couple names forward. We would decide whether it's 3, 5, or besides that committee. We would appoint a council liaison. They would be tasked to meet 2, 3 times a year. That's how I see it. And
with the objective of what?
I think when you have people with expertise, it's like anything. We all have areas of expertise, and we rely on oversight, I guess.
Okay. So just analyzing our existing plan, providing feedback.
I'm not an insurance professional.
I just
If
want to make
someone-
sure we achieve
But
the
he's
outcome
married
you're
to
looking
one.
for.
Yes, I know. I can hear it right now. Yeah. I think that the committee, if you will, lays out a series of questions to be asked.
Okay. So peer review, as you like to say.
Yes.
Questions to be asked. And Helene, what does the timeline for renewal conversations look like?
So we started this year, I would say January, February timeframe, only
Okay.
because we were going out to market.
Okay.
So it depends on whether or not we would. We wouldn't want to go out to market every year because then our insurance carrier wouldn't take us seriously. So it wouldn't be something that we would be looking to do in the next year coming up.
Okay.
Because we just went to market this to get this rate that we got.
Okay. Cool. Ronald.
I'm just a little worried about Bob's committees. I mean, Helene's done a phenomenal job. I mean, with bonds and everything else. You saved us a ton of money a few years ago by redoing some of the bonds. And do we really need to overwhelm her with more work? I mean,
I guess I need more on why we would need a committee rather than just, going out to market at an appropriate time and seeing what we get back. I'm a little hesitant about a committee made of experts if those experts have ties to particular companies and they're going to be trying to, sway or help out their people in the insurance industry. What exactly would an expert provide that we aren't already doing is, I guess, my question.
Just to let you know, my former life before I became a CPA, I was a insured license professional before I went back to school to become an accountant.
Well, there you go.
she wears more than one hat.
Go ahead, Bob. Did you have something do you want to respond to that?
I think that you know, for me to sit here and answer these questions, really, it's out of my league. My wife has suggested on numerous occasions to me
Totally.
the reasons why a committee of sorts is a good thing to have, and I'd be happy to have her articulate that to you in an email or in person. But it's, or we can get somebody else. It's and I'm not trying to pile on to work for Helene, but I think that I think there's benefits to having a committee. Whether it's maybe once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year. I will leave that to.
Were you going to say something?
I was thinking maybe rather than having kind of an official committee, especially, I think it comes down to the finance committee, frankly. And so if the finance committee is saying, okay, we know that Helene's let us know that it's, we're looking at insurance for next year, we might need to renegotiate, then I think it's on the finance committee to also, bring in some people to come to the meeting and ask some really good questions if we feel like we're not prepared to ask those questions. I begin to get worried about scope creep if we're getting an insurance committee and then what's next? Are we getting a
committee.
a trash committee, and then are we getting this committee? And I think that I think it's great to bring in subject matter experts to help ensure that we're asking the right questions. But I feel like that should be kind of more aligned to the finance committee and their kind of core objective. But that's just my opinion.
We have 3 or 4 committees that don't meet at all. They're the sewer committee. They meet once every 2 years. The appeals committee may meet once a year. So it's not really a burden. I think it's an asset to have. At the very least, I think we should at least have a professional come in here and present the idea. It's out of my league. If you want to,
Why don't you mull that over, Bob, and maybe next time we have a council meeting, you can give us a little bit more on your thoughts on what that might look like. Is that helpful?
Matt and I will talk about that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, we can do
All
that.
right.
We can do that.
Okay.
Chair Douglas, just one thing, looking at FY27 to consider, and I think it's more near term. Actually, I'd like to get something either the end of this month or at the start of June. Is talk further action on the extension of TIF 1.
Oh, yeah.
I know Alyssa Tibbetts is working on that right now, doing forecasting and modeling regarding that and what the revenues look like and where that's going to be. And there's potential for an investment in a property in town that would be tied similar to that, which would have jobs and productive member of the tax base, which is what, kind of where that's going.
Yeah.
So I've got her working on that. So if looking at that, I mean, it's FY27, but also the next 20 years after that, kind of important. So you can put that as far as
When do we need to
Near
make a
term.
decision on that again?
trying to get that as soon as possible to you with the math and what those forecasts would look like. And then, but TIF 1's probably the most important one because that's got the closest expiration date as well. And Councillor Kopp provided, a really nice framework that I've got Alyssa also working on that as well to try to reconcile that with the whole overall conversation. So if we could, we'd like to have something, possibly ready for council action in June. So
Okay.
Is there any?
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask because for FY27, remember to extend it, it's under that 75% affordable housing or transit, and currently it is or, right? So have we heard anything about it becoming an and or?
we have not.
Okay.
As Councilor Reed said, I think there's like 1,800 bills in the legislature that they've been slowly processing. However, if you do that, take that action, it would be a simple amendment if you
Oh,
wanted
I
to do
see.
that in the future. So if you could make sure you didn't let it expire.
Okay.
And then if legislative sentiment changed and they put it and/or, then at that point you could amend it and say, well, we want to amend it to do either or and/or, transit and/or housing. That way you could flex that to meet the flexibility that you need as the statute changes.
But would we need to make some kind of decision in order for Alyssa's application to DECD to, like, we would kind of have to choose one if we're right? Or no?
I don't think you have to choose it there. It's just a question of when you are going to use those funds. It's not going to be, well, I'm going to use 10 grand to housing and 20 grand to transit. It's more. I think she'll be able to answer that more definitively.
Okay.
So, Matt, with all this, the number crunching and sort of scenario planning with this, are we also looking at, if we extend TIF 1, but then also looking out, the impacts to the general fund and state aid and all that if we don't extend it, and what that does, because all that money comes into the general fund, great, but also that impacts the all the ratios and equations and all that for a whole bunch of other things and the second and third order effects and all. But I think it would be good for me at least to see if we extend it, this is all those second and third order effects, and then if we don't extend it, this is all those second and third order effects.
I think as part of her analysis, she has to show what the shift impacts are going to be, because the state asked those questions as well as to where it's going to be. So part of that's that modeling as to say, okay, this will have the impact of, one of the other attributes of an amendment that you may want to consider is the ability to throttle up or down as the town needs. So that currently is not in there. So having that, the town can look at that and say, well, we can only capture X amount of value this year and use that towards the general fund, or find ways to financially plan that over the next 2 decades of that extension. But her modeling has to show, I believe, what that shift impact is going to be.
And I would recommend having Alyssa come in when
Oh,
it
gosh,
comes
yeah.
down. I mean, she's a crackerjack on that. I mean, she knows, she's dealt with this almost from the get-go. I mean, so she's really sharp on it. So, and she can give you the numbers, like school funding, how much you'll gain, what you'll lose. It's pretty complicated. I mean, and it's 18 years of it, and I don't know, I still understand the whole thing. So.
Go ahead, Tig.
I know Ocean View or TIF 8 isn't fully built out, but do you know offhand, Helene, what our revenues were for TIF 8? And then, how much we brought in from TIF 8, and then what the projected is going to be once it's finally done? Ish.
I didn't hear the first part.
So TIF 8, Ocean View, right? And that it's not fully
Not fully
complete,
built out.
right?
Yep, they're still in phase 3.
Do we know offhand how much came in this year, and also once it's complete, how much the revenue is going to
Believe me,
eventually
I'm
be?
bugging the assessor every day for those numbers.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, once I get those numbers for his April 1st evaluations, we'll know.
Okay, cool.
Be able to report back to Finance Committee on that. Because that also, if you saw on the agenda, when I gave you the TIF numbers that you're approving tonight, on revenues, I put estimates because it's really going to be all based on value as well as mill rate. And we don't really have, especially for TIF, what that number looks like quite yet.
And TIF 8 is currently, in current state, is our only TIF district that we can throttle, right?
I believe that's correct.
I'm not, okay. I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, I
but-
think that is. The others do not have that, but
But
that's.
don't have that,
yeah.
yep, okay,
But we've been taking the full amount each
Okay.
year on it.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Bob, did you have something?
Valuation increases every year.
Yes,
That's what
sir.
I'm saying, that's why I haven't received those numbers yet from the assessor, because he has to value each individual TIF district. Each TIF district has to be evaluated individually, and I don't know what those numbers look like for each district yet.
Ron?
It would be worth everybody to ride through Ocean View if anybody has not been down in there. It is mind-boggling, the amount of houses that are in there.
Really?
Oh, do yourself a favor some weekend, drive down in there. I mean, you will be in awe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's impressive.
It's a successful development. Very.
Are we looking, are they looking at, or are we looking at having an exit on Greeley Road?
I believe there's
think
gonna be
they've
an
already cut
right
it in.
away.
Yeah.
Is that what they're doing?
They roughed it in this winter.
They did.
Yep.
Yeah, because in between there and,
The veterinary and Godsill's old house.
okay.
You can somewhat see it, Mike, if you come up Greeley Road, you can see where stories were working. I think the wet season put a stop to it, but
They
if you
were
go
in
in,
there
if you go in from this end, you can actually picture where it's gonna come out through,
Gotcha.
and it's worth riding in there.
So we got those nice bumps in the road.
Yep.
Like just kill your suspension.
Changes daily.
All right. Any other questions about or thoughts? Go ahead, Denise.
You said that June would be the target date just for Alyssa to come give a presentation, or for us to decide if we're extending.
If we can get a decision in June, it'd be great.
Why so soon? Since we have like a good year of research and learning and forecasting and all that we could be
There-
doing.
There may be an investment tied to it that has a certain window of, let's say, 60 days for for a potential economic development project to come through. So if they know that a certain, council will end up having it as an action item as well, if they're pursuing a credit enhancement agreement with the town. But if they know that it's going to be there and the viability is going to be for a certain period of time, and they want to make their purchasing decision based on that, and if they want to move their whole business to Cumberland, then that would be kind of one and 1A together.
I think
But they have to still make that decision, and that's why we're looking at the modeling and if it makes any sense for them financially as well.
remember talking to Alyssa after the last TIF workshop that we did, and there was a piece of advice of whether you extend or not, there's no like good or bad side to it. It's literally what are the town's priorities for the next 20 years. And I think we need to have more discussions about that before we decide what we're doing with this, because if our number one priorities aren't affordable housing and or transit, then it might not be the best decision. There are a list of other things that we could use it for. So I think we need more workshops as a council. We need to discuss as a council. We need to have the data, and then cool, we have data. It takes time to digest and understand what that means, and not like make a decision right afterward, even if it is for a single business who wants to come in to Cumberland. So I feel like that is very quick. That's like a month away. So that's, for me, is too soon to make a
The
decision.
ability to throttle will be huge on that as well. So if you look at it and say, you don't have to capture it all. So if you want to look at that and say, well,
Right.
we're not going to need that, so you can, and if something doesn't take place, and you can pull that back. You can also end it if you find it's not going to be successful. So there's that option as well.
Can you throttle up like all the way on the spectrum?
All the way.
99%?
Yeah.
And do you have to do that annually, just whenever you feel like it? Is it tied to a budget year? Like, what's the?
Yeah, you tie it to your budget year. That would be it'd be most effective to have that as part of the budget process, because
can
then you're going to
anticipate.
know what X amount of revenue, what you're going to generate for revenue, what you need to capture, or what you need to
Yeah.
push toward the general fund.
Jake, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, or just one other lens to look at it, is that I think that the goals, it may not just be one goal, right? Because so one of our goals is to increase the commercial tax base so that we're, reducing property tax for our residents. And so a TIF district is a reason why a business would go and, would, as Matt said, move into the town of Cumberland. And so I think there's also looking at the lost opportunity and the lost revenue by not being able to extend that district, right? Like we've been struggling, I mean, it's taken a lot, we're at what, like 9% of commercial tax base, right? Like we've been trying for a while to get, like we're not even at 10 yet, And so I think, and I don't disagree with you, Denise, I think that it all takes a lot of thoughtful discussion and kind of dialogue, but also knowing that, there are there are also upsides and upsides kind of to our, sorry, I'm not saying this correctly. I think that there are shades of gray, maybe, right? There could be benefits to putting it back into the general fund, but also we could be losing opportunities to broaden the commercial tax base because those CEAs are so appetizing, you know, to potential organizations that might want to come in to the town.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
My main thing on that is it's mostly built out. So kind of how much space is left versus, you know, ending it and then creating a new one elsewhere, since we're almost out of total land percentage to have TIF districts. We don't have a whole lot of acres left to create new TIFs. So just it's part of the whole conversation. Yeah.
Is there
What you're saying.
anything that would prevent us from, you know, if you have a TIF area and, like Denise was saying, you know, if a lot of it is built out, of ending that TIF and then saying, all right, well, you know, this 25% of that original area is not built out, and we want to incentivize that, and then starting up a TIF again on that 25% that wasn't built out from the original. Is there anything that prevents us from, like, if you had a TIF district on one area, once you end it, you can't have it on there for another X number of years or anything like that?
You can amend the area. You know, you can shrink it or flex it or put properties in from other sections. It depends upon how you want to define what that TIF district is going to be. So if you had a section that might not, you know, in the past, the towns amended them a couple different times to change where like a lot of Twinbrook, I think, was in a TIF for quite a while, and then that got edited out or amended out at one time, so because it wasn't going to be as applicable. So you want to flex it to the size that you need, so you're not so as Councilor Thorson says, you're not bumping up against the amount of area that you can capture. So you look at that and try to make a calculated decision to say, well, this is going to be productive or this isn't, or if you want to include an area that where you think growth is going to happen that may not be currently in there, but it's TIF adjacent, then you could say, well, we're going to drop this parcel here, but we're going to flex it over to this parcel here and try to reshape that.
Right, but if we extend, then we're limited with the transportation and currently or affordable housing. If we created a new one on that same area, then we wouldn't have that same restriction. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, if it was a new TIF, then you wouldn't have that. But you can't end one, like say you had TIF, like TIF 1, you can't let that end and then say, well, we're going to create this as TIF 9 and we're going to grab all that area again. So you're not going to end it and start it all over again. In this case, you've kind of worn out your.
So the state wouldn't really, we wouldn't be able to say, all right, you know, you've got the rectangle and 75% of that, you let it end on the all of it, and then you come back on 25% of that rectangle and say, all right, well, we want to have this new TIF on there without the restrictions that they place for the state wouldn't, they would frown upon that.
Yeah, you'd want to probably, if it was applicable, you'd want to create a new TIF on an area that hadn't been before, and then possibly amend another one that was a historical TIF and shape that down or reduce the size of it, so you don't bump up against that acreage amount restriction.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
it's also based on your captured value. So that's the benefit of having done it prior, is because you had a very small value to it and you're growing that value. Whereas if you redistrict an area and try to create a
Ground zero.
District 9, you have to start with that new value that it's now worth. And so that incremental increase, you have to see what you can really grow there based on what that incremental increase of captured value versus what you think you can make it as
The
well.
advantage is time, right? Like that extended period of time captured and.
Right.
And TIF 1 is one of the most successful TIFs I've seen. Just from where it started to where it is today, the growth that it's had and the value that's been captured, and the strength of that revenue has allowed the town to do a lot of things that other towns haven't had the opportunity to do because they didn't have that good fortune. So when you capture it at a low point, that floor is really low, and your ceiling is much higher. So
As just real quick, as part of the whatever TIF discussion we have, I think it would be good if we had the information on what each TIF has paid for over the past however many years. You know, it's the adding sewer, you know, and the dollar amounts of that. Of if we hadn't had this would be from the general fund, and what that would have done to taxes, and you know, it's a lot of number crunching and all. But I think it'd be good for me and others to see what it has done, because I think a lot of people see it as like, well, this is making us pay more to the schools, but it's also allowing us to get all this other infrastructure that you aren't paying for, and maybe it's, you know, it's actually a win-win.
Question.
Go ahead, Denise.
Question about the throttling. So if you extend a district, you know, and it has to be housing or transportation at this point, and then you're throttling it, is that you're shifting that to the general fund, but that also is not required to be used for housing or transport just outside? Isn't that like a huge loophole to that whole thing?
Possibly.
Okay.
Yes, if you think about it, I mean, if you wanted to throttle it, basically the captured revenue is where that split has to be applied to. So if 1 year, you know, if it was great in 1 year, 75% of those revenues have to go towards transit or housing. The 25% would go towards allowable TIF expenses. But if you throttle that down, let's say by half, still 75% of that 50% you say that you captured has to go towards those effects, and then 25% would go towards TIF allowed expenditures. So it's what you capture for that TIF related revenue that you have to allocate that way. So but if you reduce it, then you know that other part's not impacted. It's just not captured either. So it comes into the mix as far as, you know, general purpose aid education or county taxes and things along those lines that are impacted by the overall taxable value or state valuation that we have.
So when I know I'm asking the same question twice, but when you're throttling and you're moving that stuff to the general fund, is that just in the general fund for your free use, or those still have to fall under allowed TIF uses?
No, it would be general revenue. So it would be coming in as similar to a property that's not captured in there, that, you know, the dollar that comes to that comes towards the overall revenue for the town, or general revenue.
Yeah, I feel like there's just a huge loophole. Now that I said that, they're going to close it.
Yeah. No, it's there.
Don't bring it to their attention.
They did that, and you know, probably with full knowledge that, okay, there's a way to work within that. So.
Bob?
At some level, this is a little frustrating, because I think this conversation has been going on for about 2 years about extending TIF 1, and I can't think of a single reason why we're not getting it done. I mean, it's
You have a bunch of new people on the council, and you're about to have more.
yeah, I know. So
I mean,
let's get it done. Let's just get it done.
Dig, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just wanted to confirm that if you, with Matt and Helene, correct me if I'm wrong. So if we were to not extend TIF 1 and all of that revenue goes back into the general fund, that also impacts the school funding formula, right? Because our TIF valuation is not included. And so that also...
It goes up.
It goes up, yeah, right.
It hits your general purpose aid education. It hits your local cost sharing agreement and the SAD.
Yep.
It hits your taxes at the county level. And it may also hit your revenue sharing as well. So those 4 items kind of get impacted because that new value comes in and it shows the town has a greater ability to pay.
Right.
To
in
pay more
theory.
taxes.
Right.
And that's going to be part of the forecasting numbers and stuff that we get from
Unless
either
it has to
side,
do
right?
Those shifts, yeah. They call it a tax shift, just because you're capturing it. So it shifts it off from the general area into those other areas, into the town's captured area. So
Yeah.
Ronald?
To my knowledge, the Rusty Lanton never asked for a credit enhancement agreement,
No,
did
sir.
they?
Nope.
So that went from a $250,000 evaluation to $6.5 million one.
Ron, we're not supposed to say that. We shouldn't say that.
not all coming on this year, though, because April 1st it was
no,
framed.
I realize
So we
that.
get a couple of years worth of growth from the Rusty
Yeah.
Lantern.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not captured. or no credit enhancement
Golly.
agreement or anything like along those lines. That they didn't ask for any. They didn't ask for.
No,
any
he
credit
was
enhancement
adamant he didn't want one.
Oh, he
Fro-
didn't. Oh,
from the
he
start,
actively
no.
pursued not wanting
He
one.
talked to me about it from the start because I told him that it was in a TIF district,
Yeah.
you know, and that was available. And he says, no, I don't take advantage of them. For what reason? I have no idea.
I mean, what a godsend.
I know. I mean, exactly. I mean,
I will definitely be buying my candy bars there. So you better have Butterfingers, king size.
you can
I
get
like
a
the
Rusty
2 in a
Latin
pack.
rewards card too. So.
Like the 2 in a pack. Matt or Helene, are you able to kind of walk us through next steps? I know we're planning on voting tonight on the budget overall, but when will we get a sense of what the impact is on the mill rate, all those good things? I believe the school votes next. It's
Thursday.
Thursday, right?
Yes,
This
2 days,
Thursday.
3 days from now.
Yep. So we should get a sense right after that.
Yes. Right
Okay.
now, as you noticed in the packet that Helene sent regarding the budget, it had 2/3 of the items. The largest item is the one that's still remaining, and that's when the school has their district meeting on Thursday, and they have their vote, and then it's ultimately ratified on June 10th when the town goes out to have their vote on the school budget referendum. So at that point, we'll at least know what the bottom line number is going to be.
Okay.
However, it'll be in August when town goes to commitment of taxes that you'll ultimately know what that tax rate will be.
Okay.
I can speak to the fact that we're looking at, on the town side, 2.7% is the net, or is the impact that we have based on everything we know at this point.
Okay.
However, the assessor is out there on a daily basis picking up new value. So let's say he adds $27 million to the overall assessment, which I know we're in that range, if not greater than, for this year. So that offsets that 2.7%. So it could be 2% or less than that when
Okay.
the ultimately know what the impact is on the town, on the town's portion of the mill rate. So that pushes it down some because that growth changes that math.
Okay.
So right now we'll know what the top number is. It's a big fraction. We'll know what that top number is, which is the net to be raised from county, town, and school. But the bottom number is the value of the town that the assessor assesses, and then we can look at that on each component. So we'll know what the net effect is on the county, net effect is on this town, and net effect is on the school, and then the overall picture as well with all three combined.
Okay. All right, cool. Any other takeaways, feedback for next year? Or did you have something? Nope. Okay. I know, and during our last meeting, there was some feedback from the public about including public comment next year, so I think that's something we should take into consideration as we develop a plan, if I'm finance chair next year. And then, if nothing else, I guess we will adjourn this until our meeting starts at 7 p.m.
Sweet.
Nothing else? All right, thanks, everyone.
You better be the finance chair next year.
I don't know. We'll see. Might retire.
No.
I'm retiring from my life.
I told him that it was in a TIF district, and he adamantly, the first thing out of his mouth, he says, I don't use those. And I'm thinking, and I asked him why, and he didn't give me a reason. The guy that owns the Rusty Lantern, he didn't want to take advantage of it. I mean, 50% off your tax bill for 20 years.